Sending a child back to school can feel like you're sending them into a war zone. And for some children, their nervous system will be reacting as if that is exactly what is happening. Because the brain of a child who has PTSD from school is actually not that different from the brain of a veteran who has PTSD from war. The good news is that PTSD and other anxiety conditions are not fixed states. As parents, we can help our children heal their educational wounds. Welcome to the Send Parent Survival Guide podcast. My name is Esther Freeman and I help parents learn the techniques and principles for how my daughter went from 5 or 6 violent meltdowns a day to virtually 0. In this weekly podcast, you'll learn how to have a calmer family life. So why don't you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? If your summer holidays are coming to an end or maybe just a few weeks away and you've got that feeling of dread inside you, I know how you feel because I have been there as well. For my daughter, the summer holidays were the time where she could truly relax, and it was the time where I felt I had my real daughter. The rest of the time in school was just this bundle of stress and violence and aggression, and I knew that wasn't really who she was. And I also knew that as soon as I sent her back into school, that was who she would become again. And it was heartbreaking. At the time, I didn't think anything was ever going to change, but I'm here to tell you that it can. And I want to share with you some of the things that I did to help my daughter get over this hurdle. Now, she went from a child who was barely in school, and when she was in school, she would come home and just have that emotional catch-up burst, and often it would end up in violence and aggression. She's now a child who does go into school every day. Her attendance levels are good. Her punctuality is good. I'm not saying she likes school. I don't know that she will ever like school. But we have strategies to help her cope and get through it. I want to share with you how we used to deal with the end of the summer holidays when we had that dreaded beginning of school coming at us, because I know some of you will be sitting in the place that I used to sit in, which was just a place of fear and loathing. So the first thing I want to share with you is that you need to work on yourself as a priority. Now, the good news is I've got a very easy way that you can do that. It's called tapping, and it is a form of talk therapy combined with acupuncture. But instead of needles, we use our fingers. And the really good thing about tapping is that you can do it by yourself at home. You don't need any fancy equipment. You don't need any particular specialist training, and you can just do it by yourself. And also, it's free. I have a guided tapping meditation, and I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes that you can have absolutely free, and it will teach you a meditation and all the tapping moves that you need to bring down those stress levels. And it works really effectively and quickly. In less than 10 minutes, I think you're going to see a difference. So first of all, try tapping. Use that free guided tapping meditation that I've got in my show notes, and you will start to see a difference. The next thing I want you to do is just practice some mindfulness. So I'm releasing this so that it's near the end of the Scottish holidays, but we've still got a few weeks left of holidays in the UK. And I just want you to try and stay present in the moment. So enjoy your child while they're calm. Stop trying to think forward on what it's going to be like when the holidays end. I know that's sometimes easier said than done, but just try and stay present and enjoy these good moments while they last. One thing you might want to think about doing is keeping a glimmers journal. Glimmers are those small moments in the day where you find little bits of joy. They can be really small, like the way that your child smiled at you, or the way they laughed at your silly joke, or maybe an ice cream that you shared. Just little moments that made you just think life isn't so bad after all. I like to write those in a journal just because I find it helps cement them in my mind that actually we do have good moments together. So why don't you try keeping a journal as well? Just maybe every day write down one thing that happened that day that was a glimmer in your life. The third thing I want to suggest is to create some social stories for your child to help them ease them back into school. If you're not familiar with social stories, they're a tool that's often used with autistic children, but they work with other neurodivergent children as well. And they just help a child to explain to them what's coming up, and so they can feel a bit more prepared, and it takes the uncertainty out of them. I will share a link in the show notes for some templates for creating a social story so you can do one for your child. But the basic principles are that you explain what's happening now, and you explain what's happening next, and then maybe what's happening later. And you will pull out all the different things that your child can expect to happen. The noises, the people they meet, the routines that they will follow. If you are going to create a social story, I wouldn't suggest you introduce this too early in the summer holidays. For some of you hyper-organised people, and I put my hand up, I am one of those. I use organisation as a way to calm my anxiety. So I know some of you out there might be a little bit like me and want to do these really early so you're fully prepared. But this can actually amplify that feeling of, oh my God, this terrible thing is coming up. So I wouldn't suggest you do your social story more than, say, a week before the start of term. I would also discourage doing things like countdowns. I know some people have used this for children who are starting school for the first time. Now, if you have a neurotypical child, maybe that will be okay for them. I'd argue about how helpful it would be, but maybe it won't cause too much stress. I don't know, you know your child, but I definitely wouldn't recommend a countdown for neurodivergent children. All I think it will do is amp up the anxiety. So no countdowns, yes to social stories, but don't do them too early. Another thing that you might want to do is, if you are going to a new school, is practice doing the school run. So if they're starting school for the first time, you might want to just walk or cycle there together a couple of times just so they know what to expect. And doing this at a time where they're not super stressed on that first day might be a little bit easier than leaving it all to that very first day. If they are starting at secondary school and maybe starting to go into school by themselves, maybe they now have to take a bus there. Again, it might be a useful thing to do once, maximum twice, just to prepare them. And again, just like those social stories, I wouldn't do this too early on in the summer. Maybe again, just a week, 10 days at most. And don't over egg it either. Just keep it really relaxed. So that's practicing doing the school run. My next tip is tip number 5, and that is to arrange a play date or some kind of meetup if your children are older with someone that they're going to have in their class when they start school again. So if they're starting school for the first time, you may have to go and find these people. There may be someone from their nursery that they're going to school with, and so you can do it with them. Maybe it's someone that they don't know that well but could get to know better with a play date. Or maybe you've got to find someone completely new. Community Facebook groups are quite good for this. So you could put a message out on local community group. Maybe it's a parents group, maybe it's a general group, and say, has anyone got a child starting at this group? Could we arrange a play date? If they're going to secondary school, you can do exactly the same thing. Again, they might know children from their primary school that's going to the same school. Maybe they're not that great friends, and maybe you could encourage a stronger friendship by just meeting up in the summer holidays with them. If they're just staying at the same school, then I would still encourage getting together with another child. Some children in the holidays do completely disappear into their devices, into their games and whatever. And I have no criticism of that. I think some neurodivergent children just need to do that in the summer holidays. It's a way of them healing and recovering from the pressures, particularly the social pressures of school. But I would say if they do that, then you do need to make some space for them to come out of that kind of isolation zone, for them to start practicing their social skills again, just so that when they go back into school, it's just not a huge jolt to the system. If you have a child who's very reluctant to do that, one thing that you could do is maybe walk a neighbour's dog for them. Dogs can be a great way of practicing social skills in a non-judgmental environment. So maybe just taking the dog for a walk every once a week or something like that, just to get them out of the house and practicing those social skills. If you are doing play dates or meetups with other children, then keep them short and keep them structured. I would also recommend that you don't do it in one of your house or the other person's house. Find a neutral space. I think it's easier for kids when they're in a neutral space. And as I said, keep it structured. So maybe have some kind of activity. Maybe it's a craft, something that you can do together where you can be scaffolding your child's play. A lot of neurodivergent children have executive functioning difficulties, and that can make free play really difficult. And what you don't want to do is having this play date that you're doing to help prepare them for the back to school being a really stressful experience and being counterproductive. So as I said, keep it short, keep it structured, keep it in a neutral space. The next thing that I would recommend is to up your parental presence. So parental presence is spending time with our children just to show them that we are always there. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of time. You can keep it fairly short, but make sure that it's regular. So what I do is me and my daughter spend 10 minutes every day doing something that she likes and is totally child-led. It's often for her nowadays. When she was younger, it would be playing games. Hide and seek is a good game actually, because what children are doing with hide and seek is learning about the permanence of the connection between themselves and their parents. So when you go hide and you find them, what it teaches them is that you will always be there. Even when you disappear for a moment, you will always be there. When my daughter first started school, we played huge amounts of hide and seek, and I think it was her way of dealing with my disappearance during the day and knowing that I would come back at the end of the day. So hide and seek is a really good game. Also, if your child just wants to play babies, if they want to pretend to be a baby again, I would say just go with this, and I would say go with it regardless of their age. Starting school, changing school, going back to school can cause emotional regression. So meet your child where they're at emotionally in that moment rather than where they are chronologically. It's unlikely to be a permanent state. It's probably just their subconscious way of saying, I need to know that you are there for me. And we can do that through playing games of babies. For older children, they may just want to play on their tablet and they may not want to do anything else. Fine, sit and watch them play their tablet. Ask them what their game is about. Maybe join in with the game with them. Whatever they want to do, let them lead it. And if all this sounds like terribly boring and you just don't want to do it, that's fine. Put a timer on it. Set a 10-minute timer and just do 10 minutes. You've got 10 minutes in your day, and honestly, you will see the results if you do this as a regular thing. The next suggestion that I have is reconciliation gestures. So these are small things that we do for our child just to show them that our love is unconditional. So they are not linked to any behavior. They are absolutely not rewards. They're just things that we do to show our child we're thinking about them and we love them. So it could be something like ordering a takeaway for them, or it could be even, you don't need to spend any money, it could just be cooking their favorite meal for them, or it could be giving them a hug. Of course, they can be bigger things like taking them out for shopping for the day. I do like to have, my daughter is a bit of a shopaholic, and I do like to sometimes just say, let's go out and do some shopping, because then we're dealing with parental presence and reconciliation gestures at the same time. And reconciliation gestures can come after a meltdown as well. And we're not rewarding the bad behaviour. We're just saying, I know you had this really difficult moment back there, and I'm just showing you that I love you anyway. As I said, a reconciliation gesture can be a hug. It can be watching a TV show together. It could be letting them have an extra 5 minutes on the tablet that night. So think about reconciliation gestures in the lead up to school to show them that whatever happens at the start of the school, you still love them. You might want to have one planned after the first day at school as well. It could just be a special little snack that you bring them when you pick them up, or as taking them, giving them a lift to their friend's house if they're slightly older. Something small. It's not a reward. It's not linked to any behaviour. You're just showing them that you love them. So the next point is working with teachers. This is such an important one, and I know the experience of doing this is going to vary massively from school to school, but I would urge you to reach out to teachers before things get bad and tell them, my child has a history of school refusal or school anxiety, or it's just difficult when we go back to school. How can we work together to try and deal with these issues? Now, the response you get is going to be different, but we should always strive to have a good parent-school relationship so that you're working together instead of against each other for your child's difficulties. One of the things that I used to do with my daughter's old school when she was younger is arrange to go in on one of the inset days. A lot of schools will have an inset day at the beginning of school, or some kind of teacher planning day before the kids go in, and ask if you can bring your child in then just to say hello. It doesn't have to be long, it can be 10-15 minutes. But I found that it helped my daughter to go into the school for the first time when it was still quiet, and the teachers would show her desk, they would just say hello to her, they might show her books, we'd remind her where she hangs her coat up, and just being there before all the chaos of the first day, all the people, the noises, the smells, the sounds, all of that started up. She had an opportunity to go in when it was still calm, and I think that really helped her. Sometimes this won't be possible if your teachers are on training, but ask the school what else you might be able to do just to ease them in to the beginning of term. Now, as I said, I know some schools will respond really positively to this, and some schools will just be quite difficult. If you have a school who is not willing to work with you at all, if you tell them, right, my child has this history of school refusal or history of school anxiety, I need a bit of help. If they're not coming to the table at all, then what I would say is it's time to start looking for a different school. Unfortunately, some schools are very stubborn and they won't help. But let's try and go in with a positive attitude and ask the school, what can you do to help ease my child back into the term or start them at a fresh school? And the earlier you can have those conversations, the better. Now, I know a lot of you will be on your holidays already when you're watching this. Still send them that email, because teachers do check their emails over the holidays. They'll be less, the response time will be longer because they're checking them less frequently, but it's still worth sending that email. And my final point is to plan some transitional items for that first day back. Now, some schools are a bit funny about kids taking toys and things into school, and I get that because they get lost and there are upsets, but actually these transitional items are really important. So if you can contact to the school and say, my kid needs a transitional item to help them come back in because they have this anxiety with school, they have this history of difficulties, and this is really going to help them. So again, try and work with the school to plan that. Promise to keep the things small, and you can have some rules around it about, they're not allowed to share it with other children, it's just for them. But hopefully you can come to an agreement that your child has a transitional item. My daughter has used these transitional items since she first started school, and I've found them really invaluable. And actually she's 11 now, and although she doesn't want to take toys and things anymore into school, she is still saying, I need to have a fidget toy so I don't pick up my skin when I get anxious. And I say that's absolutely fine. I think she's partly using it to stop the skin picking, but I also think she's using it as a transitional item, even though she, in some people's eyes, might be old enough not to need them anymore. I think actually they help all ages. Just the type of thing that you use can be different. It doesn't have to be a toy either, or an object. It could be, I know some people have drawn little hearts on their kids' hands and said, every time you look at that heart, know that I am thinking of you. I once put a little note in my daughter's lunch box, so when she opened it at lunch, it was a little message from me saying, I'm thinking of you and I love you. She absolutely loved that, and she showed it to all her friends and all the teachers. She thought that was very special. So it can be something like that too, but just giving them something that eases that transition from home to school is something to think about. And maybe, as I said, think about it the night before. Think about it with your child. Talk to them. What do you think would help you? Is there a little thing that you could take that would help you move between home and school? So do it in collaboration with them, and have a plan for it so that you're not dealing with it on the first day, because boy, I've been there. Suddenly she's turned around, I need to take something with me, and you're trying to get them out the door, and then suddenly you're having to rummage through all the toy boxes. So try and plan it the night before. Doesn't mean they're going to stick to that. They may get to the day and say, actually, no, this, now I'm in the moment, this isn't what I want, but at least you have started that conversation early, and hopefully it won't come as too big a surprise. So those are my suggestions for going back to school. I hope that they do help. If none of them do help, or maybe you've tried all these things before and none of them have worked, then you need to ramp this up a level and start applying, if you don't have one already, for an EHCP. That's an Education, Care and Health Plan. Because if you are struggling to get your child into school and you've tried all these things, you have evidence that your child has learning difficulties. So that means difficulties with accessing the national curriculum. It's not the same as a learning disability, it's just a difficulty. So your child can be achieving academically, but if they're struggling to get into school, they still have a learning difficulty. And if you've tried all these things and they don't work, then you have evidence they have that, and you should be applying for an EHCP. Your first step would be to approach the school SENCO. If you are having any difficulty with getting them to engage with that, if they're filling you with loads of nonsense about your child not meeting the criteria, then you can apply yourself. Now, this is a whole separate topic and I'm not going to delve into it right now, but I want to let you know that at the time of recording this, I am planning very soon to launch some additional support for people with educational difficulties for their children. Because I know this is such a big topic and so many of you need help right now. So stay tuned, subscribe to this podcast, because I will be announcing the launch of those educational support on this podcast, and make sure you're subscribed. And I'd also ask you to do one more thing, and that is rate and review this podcast. If you do that, it helps the algorithm in the podcast platform, and it means that more people are likely to see this show and be able to join the community as well. And I know there are so many parents out there really struggling with this, so your rating and review helps another parent get the support they need. So give back to another parent today by doing that for me would be really great. So good luck with the start of term. I will be back properly from September, so make sure you're subscribed so you know when that first episode of the new academic year launches. And in the meantime, do enjoy the rest of your summer holidays and note those glimmers. Take care.